All right, how's it going? So I'm gonna just get straight into this. So there's this framework called Tailwind CSS. It's a great CSS framework that I use. Adam, who is let me see, the creator of it, Adam, is working on a set of components for Vue primarily, and I think it's going to work on React components as well. And I thought I would build those components in Ember. So this is going to be a spike. I'm going to just build an Ember app, play around with these components and see what I end up with. So it's going to be a drop down like this. I built a spike the other day and it worked out pretty well using contextual components. So I'm going to start building the thing again. Adam has a video here, which I will link in the description. But I'm just going to play through it, and as he is adding components, I'm going to create components. I'm going to try make my Ember components work like his Vue components. So hopefully you can hear me and you can hear him when I press play.
Customize. So I've built one so far. I just kind of started on this week. I started with custom select menus, which are called list boxes in like the ARIA world. And I've done it just in Vue, and I'm pretty happy with the API. So I wanted to do a little stream here today where we try and consume it. So we'll use it as if we're like a user of the library who doesn't need to know about the internals. And we'll just kind of walk through how it works. So totally unrehearsed. We'll just figure this out as we go, come up with some cool ideas for data and stuff like that.
So you can see here, he's got this blank Vue app, but you can already see that there's some markup here and some Tailwind classes. So I guess I will create that to start with. I have a brand new Ember app here, and I am going to just remove that. So let me see. He has this root template. I guess I will create a component, Ember generate component, and we will call it dropdown. And I'll invoke that component from the main application template. Okay, so there we go. And in it, he has a couple of divs with some classes. So I guess I will put that in our main application template. Padding. So these are Tailwind classes. If you're not familiar with Tailwind, with Tailwind you don't write CSS. You just add classes to elements. So it's very declarative, and I find that it's just very well built, and I'm able to build, complex UIs with Tailwind in a way that I wasn't able with CSS, not being very familiar with CSS. Anti-aliased, font sans, text gray 900. And he also has an inner div with a class of max width extra small, and margin on the X auto. Okay, so that should put that in. Oh, of course. So I haven't added yet Tailwind. So there's a quick way of doing it, and there's a slightly longer way. I'm going to do the quick way for a start. So this is not what you would do in production, but I'm going to just use the version from the CNN or CDN. I'll very likely do the correct way as the as I continue with the app. But for now, let's just get this working. Okay, so now we have these styles are now effective on the document. Okay, so we have this empty drop down. We have the same layout that he has, so let's keep going on the video.
Basically, to start, though, we need to import some components. So there's a bunch of components that we get from this file that right now I think is just components/listbox.js, something like that. Yeah. So we're going to need to import the listbox itself, the listbox label, the listbox button, listbox list, and listbox option. I also have this listbox popover or pop-up. I don't think I'm actually going to end up shipping that. I think I have kind of a better way to do that.
Okay, so I'm going to create empty components for all of these using the generators, Ember generate component, list box, then list box label, then list box button, list box list, and list box option. Okay, so let's create these components here. Let me just put button, label, list, and option. Oh, and list box itself. Okay, so that'll just, if I'm using them, it'll show me what I'm using. So let's continue with the video and see what he does next.
So we've imported these kind of 5 components, and these all work together to create these custom selects. So let's register these components with Vue. And again, I'm going to start by setting up some data. So the way that this component, this is meant to work the exact component here, and to synchronize Alpine for the Vue version, and not even production. It can even work. Can convince. Anyways,
yeah, skipping through.
We got this stuff.
Let's
set up some data. So we'll have wrestlers. Then we'll have like wrestlers, and we'll make Randy side, especially because pro bottom by the lots of you can do the pre-select component, and we're going to do a V model on selected wrestler. Okay. Then.
Okay, so list box. So let's invoke from our dropdown component. Let's invoke our list box component. And we should see, here's our list box component. So he passes in a V model. I'm not really familiar with Vue, but I think we'll be able to figure it out as we go. As we need things, I'll add them in. I haven't set up this data yet, so I'm not going to pass this in. I'm just going to see what he does with the rest of the structure of the components.
We're going to do a listbox label, which renders nothing but a span, so we can do whatever we want here. We can be like, you know, selected wrestler, and then we'll do a listbox button. It's annoying that these don't autocomplete that well. And in here, we're just going to put like the selected wrestler name, probably. And then we're going to have a listbox list. And inside the listbox list, we're going to have a bunch of listbox options. So we're going to do like a v4 of wrestler in wrestlers. Woo. And we'll just use like the wrestler name here. And each option also needs to have a value so that the list box knows like what the values are. Think of it just like a regular old HTML. We'll complain if we don't have, you know, all these people. And
okay, so he's got some markup on the screen. So I'm going to do it the way he did it, and then we'll refactor it to be a little more to use Ember contextual components probably. But this would be good enough to start. So within the list box, we have a list box label. And in it he has selected wrestler. And then a list box button. within that, he has a selected wrestler. I don't have that at the moment, so I'll just put in selected. Then he has a list box list. And within this, he has a list box option. And he's obviously he's iterating over, this must be the view way of iterating over an array. And within it, he shows the wrestler. So this will show the wrestler. Let's just show that we are rendering that. We are not. Okay, of course, because the if I go back to our drop-down component, the first thing I'm doing is invoking this list box component, but if we look at the template for that, it's just some static text. So actually what I want is to yield, so we render the contents. Label button list. Okay. Oh, of course. So yeah, so like all of these take some markup that's been passed to them, and all of them are just rendering this static text. So I want to do the same that I did to list box and just yield out whatever we're passing them for now. Okay, I should have, in hindsight, I should have left it at yield. That's kind of the default when you create a component. Okay, so we have this selected wrestler, selected, and wrestler. So his actually has some data, so we should probably create some data. So where am I going to do that? I mean, ultimately, this drop-down component is going to be, you know, somewhat generic for our app, but it's going to apply a whole bunch of styles that we want and behavior that we want in our app, and this will be like the reusable thing in our app. So in reality, we'd probably like pass the data in here, like at items is equal to something, but for now, I'm just going to actually hard code the data directly into this drop-down component, and we can refactor that later. So this I think it will be a little easier. So Ember generate component. I want to generate the JavaScript class for this drop-down. So drop-down and Ember component. If I pass that flag, it will generate the handlebars, and I won't overwrite, and the JavaScript and a test. Okay, so here is our class, and I am going to create a list of items. I guess we call them items. And it's going to be an array. And he put in a bunch of wrestlers. Let's see if I remember any. There's Andre the Giant. Hulk Hogan. Macho Man. Randy Savage. That's the extent of my wrestling knowledge. Let's see what else he has. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Ric Flair. Don't think I'll add them all. British Bulldog. John Cena. Okay, that should be enough for now. So there's our items or our wrestlers. So I'm going to continue to copy his style, and some of it will fit with what we're trying to do. So Flash iOS says, "Hi Gavin, why don't you use the nested component list box label list box option? V4 is in Ember is the each." Yeah, so I will. I think I will refactor it to do that. I just want to start off and copy what he's doing. It's like if I was to start building this from scratch from Ember and just use Ember straight away, I'd probably, you know, use contextual components. I'd create a trigger contextual component for the thing that opens the drop down, and then a item probably component which you can pass a block to, which will describe how to render a particular item. But I think that's not exactly what he's going for here. He's trying to so like, where would you put animation primitives in that example? So I'm going to start with what he has, get it working to some extent, and then start to refactor in Ember, or using more Ember patterns like contextual components. So we have a list of items here. So I should be able to use each this dot items as, actually I should call these wrestlers, right? Wrestlers. Okay, so each this dot wrestlers as wrestler, and for each of those we will render the list box option with wrestler in it, and of course the wrestler is the actual name, so we can use curlies here to say, to render the name of the wrestler. Okay, what else does he have? Obviously there's some markup is being applied here, so like these components have got some level of like DOM in them, so these are, I don't know, list items or whatever. So I guess I should, is there a link to his repo? Might be here. Okay, here it is. So let's actually look at what his repo looks like. Okay, so let's see, selected wrestler. He has the selected wrestler. Okay, selected wrestler is also an actual string. So let's get that working. Selected is equal to, let's go Hulk Hogan. And this is going to change. So we're going to want to mark this as tracked. So it's a track property, attract. So we can render that here, this dot selected wrestler. So we should be, yeah, here we go, selected wrestler Hulk Hogan. So I think it's now that the thing we want to do is for some of its components already, like, yeah, so let's start with the, I guess, option. So this box option. Okay, so here is the view component for list box option, and it's got a prop of value. It's got a bunch of stuff that I'm hoping I won't have to do in Ember. But let's start with the most basic part of it. So here, I guess it's where it's rendered. It knows if it's active or it's selected, and it renders an li with some adders. It's got a role, and if it's selected, it's got an aria selected attribute, and it's got some behavior if you click it or a mouse move. Okay, so like translating this into Ember, well, it's going to be an li for a start. So we're doing the list box option, so it will be an li. And it's got an ID. This is like a generated thing, it seems, and I think we'll come back to that perhaps. That's likely for the aria stuff. It's got a role option. It's got a is selected thing, which we don't know if it's selected yet, so we'll come back to that. It's got an on click. We want to select it, and a mouse move. Okay, let's do the very basic thing at the moment, which is just make it into an li with the, like, whatever here is static. So it's an li. Okay. Next one, I guess we'll jump up from that. So a list box list. So list box list. So we're looking for the component. Let's see what it has. Here's its render. Okay. It's an UL. Okay. So listbox list is a UL. And what does it have? Tab index -1. Okay. A row of a list box. Aria active descendant and aria labeled by. So I'm not too familiar with aria, but ultimately I want like these components will implement all of this. So I think it's important. Not for the first iteration though. So I'm going to again skip over that. And it's got a bunch of behavior on focus out. What does it do? It closes on mouse leave. Seems to be tracking what the active item is and sets it to null. It's got a bunch of stuff for key down. So I guess we can press up and down and it will navigate up and down. But again, we will come back to that. So the very basic, we have a UL. Okay, so we're getting closer to what his looks like. Okay. Oh, you can see actually if I focus on it, it has a similar style.
It is working.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. So let's do the selected wrestler. So let's see what that looks like. Selected, it's a list box label. Okay. List box label. So I'll go to list box label. And this is a span. Which has got an ID, which again I will come back to. I don't know if I'm going to need it or not, but okay, it's a span. What else we have? List box button. So list box button. Okay. So button, it's got an ID, type button. Some aria stuff, some is static, some is dynamic, and it's got some event handlers. Again, let's do the simplest thing and just do the static stuff. So it is a button. It has an ID. The ID is dynamic, so we'll skip over that for now. It has a type of button. I'll take this static one. Aria has pop-up. I should really familiarize myself with what these things mean. I guess the nice thing about using components that are like well built and are accessible by default is that you actually probably don't need to know this stuff, which is obviously a win if the thing just works without you even considering it. So what else? Okay, it's a button. We'll yield the contents. So we should be, I think, similar to what he has at the moment. You can see that, okay, that's about where he's at.
I hit down and hit enter, that's Rikishi. You know, if I hit down, down, enter, that's Shawn Michaels. So things are working, but
he's obviously all these behaviors that we haven't implemented yet. I guess we could probably do that. Maybe let's see where we goes with styling it, and maybe we'll apply some styles and then start working on some of the functionality.
We just have no styling or anything. So let's start with a couple things. I never use apply ever. I don't think anyone should use apply with Tailwind if you can avoid it. It sucks. It's a gateway drug feature to trick people into using Tailwind, and when they start using Tailwind, they realize that they don't actually need it. Personally, I do not care about the markup getting bigger at all. I'd rather a big string of HTML where I can actually see what I'm doing than having to jump between all sorts of files all the time. Okay, so we got a list box. We don't need to do any styling on this, but maybe what we should do first is hide the list box list unless the list box is open. So I considered baking this right into the library, but the problem is with Vue, there's multiple ways to show and hide things, right? Some people like to use vShow, some people like to use vIf. There's reasons to use one or the other depending on context. And some people might want to do transition, show the list if it's open. right? So now it's not open. We click Shawn Michaels, then we click British Bulldog, it closes.
Okay. I guess we should implement is open. Okay, so what's going to know about is open? Let's search for is open. So Listbox knows, in his implementation, knows all about this stuff, which makes sense. Like, it's a key part of this component. So in his example here, he's using vshow is open, which I think is equivalent to, like, if I go to my list, if I go to my dropdown, it's equivalent to wrapping the list, I believe. Yeah, the list in an if you know is open. Now this is probably an example of where, if I was building this from scratch, I would just say, oh, is open is like a internal property of these components. we shouldn't be exposing it to at this level. But I think the philosophy of what he's going for with these components is to, kind of like Tailwind CSS itself, to be a bunch of utilities that allow you to compose your own list box in this case. So I think this is probably going to be important for, like, if you want to do animations or things like that. So I'm just going to follow his lead and try and stick as close as possible to what he is, like, the high level API, and bring in Ember patterns where it makes sense. So where is this is open going to come from? It's going to come from the list box, I believe. I mean, it should, right? The list box, like, which one of these components should know about or own is open. And I think list box is a good, yeah, it's a high level thing. So we're going to yield it. I'm going to yield a thing called listbox, and it's going to have a property on it called listbox is open. So right now, if we reload that, it's going to hide it because this is actually undefined because we're not actually yielding something out yet. And if I click here, it obviously does nothing. So we need to build something in listbox to yield this object which has is open on it. So listbox is going to yield, we could go like, I could go is open equals true. Okay, just to demonstrate how this works. So we're yielding a kind of like Ruby blocks or anything like that. We're yielding this property out. So I could say, I mean, in this case, it's just a Boolean. So if is open, and this should actually render the thing now, does not yield, only takes a single named argument. Okay, yeah, of course. So I can yield true in this case. Okay, and it is showing it. And if I yield false, it won't show it. So we're yielding a single property, and we can yield other data here. I'm actually going to use the hash helper to yield an object which has an is open property on it, and for now I'm going to hard code it to true. So let me close some of these other ones. List option, list box. Okay. So go back to what I had. So so this is the thing that listbox is yielding, this object with an is open property on it, and currently it's hard coded to true. So this listbox is open should be true. So we should see the thing. And now if we build something which toggles this, it will toggle the is open property. All right. So like I did with dropdown, I'm going to create a JavaScript class for this list box. So I don't overwrite the handlebars, but I do want the JavaScript class. And just like dropdown, we're going to have a tracked property. So this component, the listbox component, owns the property is open. So I'm going to make it tracked, and it's going to default to false. So now in the template, instead of the hard-coded thing, it's going to be this dot is open. Okay, and I bring that beside it. If I change that to true, we should see it shows. Okay, so okay, so I guess now we want to, you know, make this thing open and close. So if I have a look at the drop down, it's the button that is going to change that, I guess. So you click the button, it will open. So this is probably the time where I make these kind of like contextual components. So that we could have listbox like do, you know, on click, it would be like that. On click, we could, you know, invoke some action that, you know, ultimately changes the state of is open. I guess we are going to do that, but I don't really want it to be at this level, right? I don't want this wiring up of this behavior to be, you know, the consumer of these components shouldn't really care about that, I don't think. So let me see. So I think probably I'll just make these into contextual components. I mean, I could do it the kind of incremental way and make this work without contextual components and then convert them to contextual components. Maybe that'd be interesting, maybe not. I'm not sure. Let me think. Let's make them contextual components. Okay, so let's start with this button. So we kind of want, you know, a way of communicating this list box. What, like, behind the scenes, we want actions and data to be kind of passed to these components. So the way I want to do that is, instead of invoking the button component directly, and I'll do this with all of these other ones, I want to emit the component, kind of pre-wired this button component in this kind of list box context here. So I want to be able to invoke the button like that instead, okay? But have the, you know, on click pre-wired. Okay, so how do we do that? So so of course this is not going to render anything at the moment. This is kind of null. So in listbox, we want to, as part of here, we want to emit the button, just like we do with is open. Okay, so button, and this is where we use the component helper. So we're going to pass this component here. So the component is called listbox button, and that should be enough for this to like render two buttons, and you can see it does here, Hulk Hogan and Hulk Hogan. But we're just like passing this component, this contextual component, on this property here. So if we were to say, so the nice thing about this is now, like, we can say, let's say, okay, what is the interface for this button? We're going to say, you know, when you click it, it does something. So let's actually implement this here. Okay, so okay, so on click, we use the on helper for this, on helper, which takes an event name and then the function that we want to invoke. So we're going to pass in an action, right, which is going to be called on click. So when this button is clicked, it is going to call this thing that is passed in. So if I'm going to get an error here if I run this, because it's noticing that this onClick doesn't exist. So I want to pass this in here. OnClick is equal to something. So let me do this dot. I mean, what do we want to do? We want to toggle. Actually, this is probably a good time to take a look at Adam's code. I believe there's something that does toggling here. Okay, so he has a toggle function. He has an open function and a close function. So when I guess we'll see where this toggle is used. This click. So the button, when you click it, he calls the toggle function. So we're going to do the exact same thing. So on click of the button, we're going to toggle, and this toggle is on the list box. This is here, and it's going to be an action called toggle, and I'll just console log out toggle for now. I'm going to import action. Action from Ember object. Okay, so this is an action called toggle on the list box component. We are passing that action to the button component and saying when on click, call this function. So the button here, we're wiring that up. On click, it will call that. So if I go to the drop down, and I'll just comment out our original one, if this works, we should have a contextual component that when we click it is calling toggle down here. Cool. So instead of just doing this now, we can say like this dot is open is equal to, and we will do the naive implementation for now, is equal to not is open. So this should indeed toggle it now. So we should see that's actually working, which is cool. Okay, probably a good time to again refer to his implementation of toggle. Okay, so if it's open, close, otherwise open, okay. And open does some things with focusing. So it sets the as open, it focuses, next tick, I guess is after the render, it focuses something else, okay. On close, it sets it to close. Okay, I'm not sure if we're going to need this stuff. I mean, I like to do the Ember way of doing this. Maybe those components can actually look after focusing themselves. Be nice. So maybe this is all we need for now. I wonder if open is called from different places. Or close, open. Is this the only place it's called? I think so. Okay, so let's keep the toggle like this for now. So what's next? Okay, let's see. We have toggling. Let's play the video for a bit and see what happens next.
So, you know, it's working better. These focus styles, by the way, the new default Chrome focus styles, I like them better than the old ones. All right. So we got that opening now. What about the label? Why don't we just use this label just for screen readers? Let's hide it. Okay, now the label's gone.
Okay, label. So probably yeah, every time I touch one of these components, if they're not contextual, I'm going to make them contextual. So this label is going to become listbox.label instead. Oh, I meant to multi-select that. List box.label. And our list box should emit that as a contextual component. This will be label, list box label, and it'll just be a plain component for now. So that should continue to work. Okay, and he used the Tailwind style SR only, screen reader only. So we'll do the same. So list box label class equals SR only. Now this is not going to have any effect. We can still see it here. And the reason is that we haven't instructed the component to use, we haven't told it what to do with these attributes, so it's just ignoring them. So the label on the span, we're going to use splattributes, which says mix those attributes into this element. So if we were to inspect that element, we should see that the span indeed is there. It just has the class SR only, and that's why it is not rendering. Okay, and we should, we're going to be applying styles to all of these things, so let's add splattributes to everything. Okay, this doesn't have an element yet. Okay, back to the video.
This is, again, just like vanilla Tailwind stuff, right? Okay, what about the button? Let's make this button kind of look cool. We'll do like rounded, px3, py2, border gray 200 or something, maybe 300. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So this is on the button. And on the drop down. Okay, so the button is rounded. Padding x3, padding y2, border gray. 300. Okay.
Sensible. Maybe let's make it like a width full, and we'll do it like a inline. Let's do width full. Okay, so I've got this container here with like a max width on it.
So width full. Looks like that. W full, yeah. Okay.
So you can see like that's why we're getting this big button. Let's do text left. All right, and let's add like an icon. Let's go to Heroicon.
Okay, text left.
And
hero icons.dev.
We could do like I think there's two good ones. There's like the selector icon, and there's also like chevron down. So maybe let's use a chevron. We'll slam that in here.
Chevron down. Chevron down. That's cool. Copies it straight to the clipboard.
And we'll do like a class of h5w5 text gray 400, something like that.
Okay, so we put that under selected wrestler, which is here, and then you add some classes, which were height 5, width 5, text gray 400. Okay.
Okay, so there's a chevron. So let's make this inline flex, items center, and justify.
So this is the list box button. You added a bunch of stuff. Inline flex. Item center.
Between, I guess.
Justify between.
Like really, this chevron's.
Okay, justify between. Justify between. Okay. Oh, wrong one. Okay.
To be like an absolute position thing, but for our purposes, like this is pretty good, right?
Oh, so let's see. How's that looking? Cool. It's a drop down.
Okay. So we've got this button. It opens the drop down now. We can click an item in the drop down, and that totally works. Now, what about let's do a little bit more styling. Let's do a little bit more styling, and then we'll worry about keyboard navigation and stuff. So this list thing looks ugly. So let's improve that. So we'll just do like focus outline none. So at least when it's open, we don't get this like ugly outline. And
okay, so this is on the list box list. Focus outline none.
instead, we'll kind of style it ourselves. So
what does that do? That removes the. Oh, well, yeah. So we're not actually applying focus at the moment. His code applies focus, so I guess we should do that soon. Maybe let's do that now. So if I just like get rid of that. Okay, so you see the way we can manually apply focus by clicking on it. But let's see how his does it. So list box list focus. Let me just search for focus and see where we actually do some focus. So I mean, we want to focus the list box when it opens, right? So list box. So why don't we just, when it renders, we give it focus. I think that should work. So oh, we have a class. We have a class for it already. Okay, so when this renders, we want to give it focus. Okay, it seems pretty. Oh, it's the list. Sorry, it's the list we want to give focus. Okay, so we want to create a class for the list. List box list. List box list, and let me think. So we want to give this focus when this renders. So an easy way to do this is using Ember render modifiers, which doesn't come with Ember by default, but it is easy to install. So let me install this add-on. Okay. So this gives us access to some modifiers. Actually, let me look at the docs. It's got did insert, did update. I think it will destroy. Will destroy. Yeah, did insert, did update, and will destroy. So we want to do focus. So after the thing renders, we want to give it focus. I think the semantics of that are right. Like you show it, you want to give it focus. So did render. So we want to use did render. Sorry, did insert. Did insert. So what do we want to do? We want to call this dot focus. Okay, so in the class for this component, we're going to use an action again. So it's import action from Ember object. And this action will be called focus. Now the arguments to this, I've just logged them out. So the argument, I think the first argument to this is going to be the actual element that we install the modifier on. So you can see that this is indeed the element. So we can grab that and we just call element.focus. So we should see that this thing, when we open it up, automatically gets focus. So I'm not sure if I'm missing something. I think the equivalent code here is not here, here. So this is the list box component. So when we open it, we call focus. And then we do this thing next tick, inbox list reference focus. So it's like we have a reference to one of the child components and we tell it to focus in the next tick. So let's follow that down. So in the list we call focus, we do some stuff with active item. Okay, so we'll probably have to do that. And then we call list box ref value children scroll into view. So this is something I'm hoping that with Ember's model that we can avoid this kind of like this high level component reaching down into its children and kind of coordinating what's going on. Like I think this next tick, this one here and this one here is, you know, representing that the list box is rendered. So if so, I think this is much nicer, right? So we can do this scrolling into view here, which, you know, is I believe is nicer. So hopefully that's the case. Anyway, we have focus working. So I think probably time to keep going.
So why don't we start by giving it like a shadow, maybe like a rounded MD or something like that. And why don't we just set the VShow.
So Israel as a clown says you want to refocus the list box button when the list closes. Okay, that's cool. So I mean we do have a close, right? In the list box. We have a toggle. Okay, so yeah, maybe we do need the close action here and then focus the button. I guess let's come back to that. I think you're right. We will have to do something there.
Here to true for a second so that we can late when I made this. So we got a little bit of a shadow on there. That's
okay. Did you add a shadow? Yeah, okay. List box list focus outline none shadow. Okay, let's catch up with the styles. So list box focus outline none shadow and rounded MD, which is medium. Okay.
kind of cool. Let's do some padding on the options maybe. So we'll say like PX, well, maybe we'll match like what we had for the thing above. Like that sort of thing.
Okay, list box option, the class, padding X3, Y2. I save that? No. Okay, looking pretty good.
And maybe on this whole thing, we'll do a little bit of padding too, like a PY1.
PY1. That's the wrong place. This is on the list box list. PY1.
All right, and we could do a border on this too, I guess. And let's position it a little bit farther away. So
Border.
First of all, let's do position absolute. And we'll do like position relative on this.
Okay, relative on the list box. And absolute on the list. Did that first.
Yeah.
Okay, we should look the same. Yep.
And we'll make this width full. And we'll go like MT2 or something, so there's a little bit of space.
Okay, that's on the list again. So MT2, margin top 2, width is full. Oh, that's not right. MT2, width is full. Did I do something wrong? I must have. MT2, width is full. This is like, my one is the full width of the screen, which isn't obviously right. Oops. Okay. Relative. Did I spell something wrong? So you put relative on the list box. Oh, is my list box not using attributes. It's not. So this relative isn't being applied because there's no element here. I haven't instructed it to do something with it. So let's have a look at his list box. Component. Guess I want to search for list box. Okay, so let's see, does this have some DOM? So there's a render in here somewhere. It does have a div. Okay, so we just want to wrap this in a div with splat attributes. Okay. So hopefully that will work. It does. Okay, let me bring this in. Okay.
Okay, so let's go back to is open here. When there's enough space in the viewport, like again, you just have to decide what to do there. There's a threshold between handling as much behavior as possible and like giving you control. Many UIs will try and dynamically show the dropdown either above or below, depending on how much room there is in the viewport. You can use a library like Popper.js for that, which I might bake into it at some point. But for V1, I'm keeping the sort of line of like what we handle versus what you should handle like a little bit lower so that we can put out something and then continue to improve on it. All right, so like this is a really long list, right? Which is probably too long. So why don't we give it like a max height of like, I don't know, what's this do? Let's go back to forcing this open. Okay, so max height 32 is probably not enough. Okay. Maybe like 56 or something.
Okay, max height on the list. Where's my app gone? Okay. Width for max height, which is max-h 56, you say? Now, from doing this before, this didn't work last time. I need to add some more people. I don't know who this guy is, but let's add a whole bunch of them. Oh, that's not gonna work. Good enough. Okay, so it seems that that max height isn't being applied for some reason. So this happened the last time I did this spike, and I guess it's, you know, because I'm just using this min.css directly off the CDN, so maybe it doesn't have those styles. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's a good time to like actually use Tailwind in Ember, like actually set it up correctly. So this is the guide that I found is really useful. So create a new Ember app, go into the project, add a bunch of stuff. Oh, I just realized I didn't use Yarn when I set this up. That's okay. Let's start using Yarn now. So we're going to add these Ember CLI, PostCSS Tailwind, PostCSS import, and PostCSS purge. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so let's continue the instructions. So we want to generate a configuration file for Tailwind. So we make a directory, add this config file, but I actually don't want to add the full. Okay, add this to the top. Add this to the top of the file. I guess this is the config file, which is this. Okay. Update the build pipeline to include plugins. So this is Ember CLI build. So I guess I just want to copy this into Ember CLI build. And then create some CSS files. Okay. And then add this to app.css. So I believe that's everything. Okay, let's see if we still have styles working. We do. Let's see if the height is working. It's not. I wonder why that is. Okay, so max height 56 on this. Okay, maybe that's like a, oh, let's see. Okay. Height. Max height. Max height. Oh, this might be a custom thing he added, or it might be part of like Tailwind UI. This here. So I bought Tailwind UI. It's like, let me see, it's $250 or something like that. It's really good. It's got all these components. I really like it, but I also really like Tailwind CSS, so I like want to support the project. Maybe he's using that, and there are like those styles are included in it. I guess for now, I mean, Tailwind is configurable. I could add those styles. Actually, maybe let's say, okay, how hard can it be? So if I want to add custom, how do I, customization. Okay, let's see. How do you do this? I'm sure it's just like a setting, config setting. Customizations, we want to, maybe I should have generated the full configuration. You know what, let's just instead of using a max height, let's just make that the height of the drop down, because actually it's not going to make any difference, because we, in this case, we know we're going to go beyond it. All right, that's good enough, because we're now where Adam is. Okay, let's go.
I mean, like, that's sensible for a list box, I think. What's 56? It kind of cuts off the Undertaker. Ideally you want to get something that sort of looks like it cuts off, and then we'll just do like overflow Y auto.
Cool, very nice.
Right, so now we got like a scrollable container here. Okay. All right, and we have it forced open, so let's just set it to is open here. You can do custom scroll bars if you want. Again, that's styling related, right? And this library is completely styleless. And maybe we'll introduce custom scroll bars as a Tailwind feature at some point. Okay, so anyways, we got the select menu kind of working now. So let's do some other cool stuff with it. So why don't we try doing something like, for the selected item, maybe we'll put like a check mark next to it. So let's get a check. And in the list box option, I'm going to add an SVG here for the check mark. We'll say like H5W5 text gray 700 or something. I don't know. This is
okay. So in the option, he added after the wrestler. So here. And then height 5, width 5, text gray 700.
This is totally arbitrary.
It's totally arbitrary.
Okay, so now you see we've got these like check marks for everyone. Now we don't want check marks for everyone. We only want check marks for the people who actually should have check marks, right? So let's make this like relative. We'll make this absolute, or let's do a span. Span, come on. Emmet, span.
I wonder does that work for me? I actually hardly ever do this. Span. Yeah, it does. Okay. Gonna go like that. Oh, I should start using that. Okay, so he's putting that underneath. Let's see what he was trying to do.
No, programs don't work. I don't know if you guys knew that, but most software is just bad. All right, absolute, inset y 0, right 0.
Okay, how do I do that? Span, absolute. How do I add a second one? So like that, inset y 0. Oh yeah, it is, nice.
Flex, item center.
Right 0. Flex, items, center.
All right, so
oh, it didn't work. Oh crap. What did I do wrong? Let's go back here. Okay, that worked. Weird. All right. Right 0, flex, item center, and then we want to move just the SVG went in there. Okay, but his is over to the right. Okay, and he has it on every single one. Why do I only have one of them? Okay, I must have got something wrong. Okay, so he has a wrestler, then a span. Oh, did he add a relative somewhere? Yeah, he did. The list box option is relative. Yeah, that's got to be it. Okay, they're still on the left though. So the span is absolute inset y. There we go. Okay.
So now we got check marks over on the right there. Let's do a little bit of padding on the right, maybe like PR2. All right, so now we've got
PR2. PR2.
like a check mark on the right, but it's there for every single one. We only want it there for the actual selected one, right? So how do we know that it's selected? So you might think, well, one way that we could do that is to just do a vshow. We could say if wrestler triple equals selected wrestler, then we'll show it, right? And yeah, that does work, and that's fine. But I've created an API that I think is a little more declarative even. So just like we have a slot up here that tells us if the thing is open, we also have a slot here that can tell us, is this the selected item? Because the dropdown knows all that information, right? So we can just say vshow is selected. Yeah, now that it's selected, we get the
okay, I guess we need to build this is selected. So he puts that around the span. Okay, so here. So let's again follow what he's doing is if is selected. So where is this going to come from? So his comes from the option is selected. Yeah, makes sense. as option. So like before, like we did with list box is open, we'll do it in option. So if option is selected, we will show the SVG. And of course we haven't built that, so we will see no check marks here. So we should probably build it. Okay, so list box option needs a class. Ember generate list box option class, Glimmer class. So is selected. So what does this get? So one wrestler can be selected, or one item can be selected at any one time. Where does that, the what's selected belong? I think it probably belongs just like is the thing open or not? It's like a top level thing. It could be like many things many of these components might be interested in what's selected. So I think, where does that live? It should be up in the list box. So the list box is going to get a second tracked property called selected, maybe. No, selected is kind of ambiguous. Selected item. Okay, so yeah, it'll own what's selected. We're going to pass that down to any component that's interested in what is selected. We'll also have an action which will allow something to, say, hey, select this thing. So we will call this onSelected. This will take the item. I'm not sure the exact naming for these things. Adam, I think he uses different terms. I guess this is a spike. This isn't actually the full implementation. Peter Meehan says, hey Peter, maybe easier to have that selection state live on the list or top level list box. Needs to have some sort of pairing with the wrestlers. Yeah, I agree. So I'm going to do that. Israel is a clown says right 0 has a period before it. Thanks. I have fixed that, but yeah, it took me a minute to notice it. Okay, so on selected, we're going to pass an item, and we're simply going to set the selected item to item. So now it's going to be an exercise in threading both the selected item property and the action to select it down into the components. So if I start with list box, I haven't made all of these contextual yet, right? So let's make list box list a contextual component. List box list. Okay, and also I'm just going to make the remaining ones, the remaining two contextual components. So we need a list and an option. List option. So this is the list box list box option. So right now we'll just not pass anything down, and this should hopefully work as before, which it does. So we're saying that the list box option yields this. We need the is selected. Okay, so we should probably pass what, the list box is going to know our own what item is actually selected. So it can pass it down to the option, and then the option can say if it's selected or not. So let's thread the selection state down. So list box option, so that we have this selected item. So let's pass that down. So, and I actually, just for now, I'm just going to go, let's take one of the wrestler names. So British Bulldog, let's say. Okay, so this is the selected item. We are passing this down into every option. And then, so we should say, like, I should be able to put, this is an argument, so we should have the selected item here. So you can see, oh, I need to put that in curlies. Okay, so you can see it has access to what this currently selected item is. So we can now create a getter called is selected list box option. We're not actually passing in the wrestler here, so it doesn't know anything about what wrestler it is. And this is kind of because we're like manually iterating over the wrestlers. It could be that this list, you give it a list of wrestlers and it does the each. So this each could live within this list component, and I could pass the current wrestler into the option. Maybe for now I'll just continue to keep this as a keep this simple and a little bit more verbose than it might end up, but like, let's just play around with it. It's easier to play around with keeping it at this level. So I will pass the item into the option, and in this case it's going to be the wrestler. So now the option is getting both what the current item is, and also it knows what the currently selected one is, because that's passed in the contextual component. So the option now should be able to say if it's selected or not, because it can return if the argument of what did I call it, item, is the same as the argument of the selected, I've forgotten what these things are called, selected item. Okay, so it's passed two arguments, the current item for the option and the selected item. So this should be enough for it to know if it is selected or not. So I can now put in here, this dot is selected, and who did I select? Okay, so Hulk Hogan, if this works, should be selected, and he is not. Hulk Hogan is false. Okay, cool. So selected item. Let's do this the simple way. So it's selected. It's given an argument of item. So let's make sure we have that. Okay, Android is giant. That's correct. And it's also given an argument of selected item. I need curlies around that. Okay, Android giant, British Bulldog. Okay, so it has both of those. So get is selected. This, I must have spelled something wrong. Item, selected item. Selected item. Args. List box option. I'm unsure why that's not working. False, false. It should be, oh, no, it isn't working. British Bulldog, British Bulldog. Okay, so let's figure this out if we can. is selected. Is selected. Kind of strange. Okay. Actually, not immediately sure what's going on. So we do have an item. We have a selected item. British Bulldog, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Randy Savage. Did I spell Hulk Hogan wrong in here? Because I hard coded it. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan. Typo in default selected item. Okay, Peter says typo in default selected item. Okay, thanks. Bull is bull. So, typo in default selected item. So where do I even say, where do I even say default selected item? This dot selected. This is the pressure of doing a live stream. Okay, selected item. Typo in default selected item. Bull equals bull. Okay, so where am I? British Bulldog. Okay, yeah. Okay, they weren't the same. Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, so there should be 2 L's here. Thanks, Peter. Okay, so let's get rid of the debugger. Typo in a debugger again. What? Oh, I already got rid of it. Okay. So cool. Let's get rid of that debugging stuff we had in option. So this is selected, should now work thanks to Peter. So it is indeed selected. Cool. Okay, so where were we in the video? I don't even remember.
Check mark. If I click Macho Man.
Oh yeah, he's
now Macho Man has a check mark.
Okay, so that's selected. So now we have to obviously mutate when you click an option. We actually want to mutate the selected value. So let's do that. So use the on modifier again. On click. We are passing into option. We're not yet. We're going to pass in a action which allows us to select the item. So on selected. So we'll pass that action down, which allows us to mutate the selected item. So this goes directly into option. So on click we can call on selected, but we want to pass the actual value that's passed in. So like what is the value of the item? So we passed it in option. We pass it in here. So the item is the wrestler. So we have access to item. And in the option, when we click it, we want to call, I'm going to use the function helper here, pass the item. So when we click the list item, it will invoke the unselected action that's passed in with the value of the item that's passed in. So in our list box where we implement the unselected, it takes the item and we set it. So that should actually work, hopefully. And it does, yeah. Except this is hard coded, but you can see it's actually updating the true and false. And we're not actually closing the drop down, which we should do. Israel is a clown says, what shortcut do you use to move all element attributes on a single line to a new line? So there's like, I'm sure there's people have shortcuts for this. I actually don't. I just like using Visual Studio Code. use multiple cursors. So there, oh, see, I even got that wrong. I'm on a Mac, option clicking to add multiple cursors. So I just press return and then put a tab in. There's much neater ways of doing that. I just don't find myself doing it that often, so I haven't learned or haven't skilled my own workflow up. But I know people who are really good at that. Like if you ever watch Sam Selikoff's videos, he's like all over that. Okay, so on selected, we're updating the selected item. I guess we must have this selected wrestler. This is in the drop down. Okay. We have this selected item. So we have this selected item in the list box. Yeah, kind of weird. I've hard coded it twice in two places. So what owns the selection state? Of course, like the outside world, this drop down actually owns the selected wrestler. So we shouldn't have this selected item here. The outside world owns that, right? So in my drop down, I should pass in the selected wrestler. How does Adam do it? I can't scroll up, of course. I mean, yeah, we're using data down, actions up. So the outside world and drop down, this component is the outside world. It owns what the selected item is. So we should pass in selected. And again, I'll just call it selected item for now. This is drop down. And this is this.selected wrestler. Okay. Yeah, like we want to make this data down, actions up, right? So we then also want to say, we want to pass in an action for on selected, I guess. Some of these names are, I will like, again, this is a spike. Definitely come back and like consult what Adam's done for Vue and kind of like think about these names a little more. So I'm kind of happy to just pick whatever makes sense for now. So on selected, so we need an action in here. Okay, so we will have an action called on selected. Yeah, just call it on selected. And we will just update the selected wrestler. Let's call this item. And we will pass this action in. This unselected. Okay, so the dropdown now owns what the selected wrestler is. And it, when the list box selects an item, it will invoke that action. So this is called onSelected. So previously where we had this selected item here, we're no longer going to have that. It's no longer the responsibility of this component. And also onSelected is actually just going to call the args onSelected. And in fact, we don't need that because we will invoke it directly. So where we pass in onSelected, this will be, no, because we actually want to collapse the component, right? We want to collapse the dropdown. So actually we are going to do this. For now, we're just going to say, okay, so when the option is clicked, we are going to call this.onSelected in the list box. This will in turn tell the outside world, like invoke this onSelected, and this will update the selected wrestler to whatever the value is, and then that selected wrestler will be passed back down into this box as a selected item. So that's a whole bunch of stuff changed. Let's see if it actually works. And cool, it does. It seems like our is selected has stopped working, so let's fix that. I probably renamed something. So this used to be called selected rest. No, sorry, in the list box. It used to be called selected item. Probably a this becomes an at. So this is now an argument that's passed in. So that should actually fix that. So we should see that goes to true. So now what we want to do is a couple of things. Collapse the drop down here. So this is where it would probably be good to break these out into two actions. Oh, that's not right. Action open and close. So we're going to call close here. Otherwise, we're going to call open. So is open is going to do set is open to true. Close will set is open to false. And now we can call this dot close. So now when we select an item, it closes the dropdown, which is cool. Peter says, heading off now, but this is a great idea. Really cool to see this come to life in Octane. Best of luck. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for saving my life tonight a couple of times. See you later. It's really cool actually to do videos on YouTube and have people comment. I've no idea if, you know, there are 2 or 3 people watching or 20, but it's amazing what the internet can do. What time is it? Oh, it's past midnight. Okay. Let's do a little bit more. So he's about to add
click Superfly.
He's about to add a icon, I think.
Superfly's got the check mark. Okay, pretty cool. Now, what about like when you're?
Oh, I have to add the check mark. Is that not working? Yeah, it's not working. Okay, so in the list box we have an option. We have this is selected. Oh, but yeah, it's here, right? So we have to yield out the selected, and we're not doing it yet. Okay, so option knows if this is selected. So we want to yield out, again, use the hash is selected is equal to this dot is selected. So now we're yielding that out. The drop down should now have access to this. So we're yielding out this object here, and it should now have is selected, which it does. So I can now remove this property here, which was meant to be temporary. Okay.
Or hovering over it with the mouse and you want it to like change a little bit. Say we wanted to style that. How could we do it? One way that we could do it is by using a dynamic class. So basically we want to say, well, actually, here we go. Here's an interesting approach, right? Say we do like hover BG blue 600, hover text white. This is going to like, you're going to think, okay, this like mostly gets us there, right? But if I hover and then start using the keyboard, it doesn't work. Right now I actually have Ultimate Warrior selected, but you'd never know that. You know, here if I hit down, down, I'm on Doink the Clown, but he's not selected. It looks like I'm about to select the British Bulldog, but if I hit enter, Doink the Clown is selected. So hover is like a very naive solution for this. We actually have a more abstract concept at play, which is which one of these items currently is like active based on either mouse action or keyboard action. So rather than doing it this way, what we can do is we can destructure another piece of data out of the option, which is whether this is the currently active option, active in the sense of whether it's highlighted. And then we can just do a dynamic class binding where we can say, We want to do BG blue 600 text white if it's active. I'll add multi-select support eventually, for sure. Right now it doesn't support it. Again, it's just been like a couple days of getting something together that I felt happy with and spiking at the API and stuff. All right, so now that we open this, you can see, why is it not working? Find an instance of use the selected item. So by default, that's the first one that's active. Now if I do my hovering, oh, interesting, they all hover. Now if I hover.
All right, so there's a bunch, or there is some code that deals with the active item here, and I've obviously not built any of it yet. So mouse leave. So this is where there is the list box. List has a bunch of well, it has a key down, and based on what you type, like escape, it closes the drop down. If you tab, it does nothing. Up and down, it will cycle through the list of items and select either previous or the one after it. Spacebar, there seems to be some type ahead stuff as well. So we haven't built any of this yet. I wonder, should I do it now or tomorrow? Let me see, it's after midnight. Yeah, I think I'll do that tomorrow. Yeah, you know what, let's do it now. Okay, so let's do part of it anyway. Okay, so like let's do this list box. List wants to do this key down stuff. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, list box list on key down. We're going to call this dot on key down. So this will invoke this action on key down. I guess we get an event. Just log out that event. So, keyboard event. There we go. Okay, so that's moving up and down, and you can see it's like giving this key up, key down. So I guess we want to implement a similar thing here. Let's so let's do a switch, and we'll do it. Let me take them all over and then just commentate them and implement them one by one. So this is the switch. The switch ends here. Okay, so there's a switch. Let's remove all these. Key length, context type. Yeah, no, a lot of that stuff doesn't make sense. This should, so we want to prevent the default, and then we want to close. Okay, so list box list doesn't know how to close yet. That's because we haven't told it how to close. So I guess we want to pass in an on close is to start close. List box knows how to close itself. So we will pass that in. So in the list now, we can call this dot args dot on close. So hopefully that should work. If I click escape, which I'm doing now, it is closing. Okay, nice and easy. Next one. Tab seems to do nothing. Pretty easy. Up. So we've no. Let's see. It does a focus. Input to focus. Down. Input to focus. Calls focus. Spacebar. Okay, so what does this focus do? Let's have a look at the code. So really it's setting the active item, and then it is telling the inbox list to scroll to I guess the active item. So let's just deal with this first, right? So out of all the components we've built, what owns the active item? So I think like we did with the dropdown, with listbox. Well, actually, no, this is different. Like the dropdown, the outside world owns the concept of what's selected, right? Data down, actions up. But what's active is kind of an internal affair, right? So I'm going to create within the list box, it's going to own what is currently active. Okay, so like we did with, passing the selected item down and an action to manipulate it, let's do something similar. So we want to do in the list. So we want to tell the list that the active item is equal to this dot active item. And then on, what we call this, on activate, on okay, on activate does not sound right. Set active item. Okay, the naming of some of these actions isn't very consistent, but it's a spike, so that's fine. So set active item is going to be the action, and we will pass that down. Here we have active item. We will have an action called set active item. And for now, this will simply set the active item to whatever we pass in. Okay, so now we're giving the list but we're telling it what's active and telling it how to change the active item. Okay, so in list, we can say is, oops, yeah, we want here, we want to be able to say, hey, whatever the active item is, pick the next one or pick the previous one. Okay, so let's do arrow down first, prevent default. So if the first one is currently active, actually, before we do this, let's get some representation of what's active on the screen. So did Adam add this blue style here? Somewhere is selected, is active. Oh yeah, sorry, that's what he did. So we now have a hard-coded value for what is active, which is here. British Bulldog, which is, where is that in the list? Okay, there it is. So let's get that styled. So so we're passing the active item into the list. Let's just check our code again. So actually, I'm just realizing that as I'm going through this, my productivity is fading. It's late here in Dublin. It's 20 past midnight. I have 3 kids getting up in the morning, so I think what I'll do is do another one of these, just pick up from where I am now, either tomorrow or Tuesday night. So if you watched, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again sometime. Thanks.